Welcome to The Impossible, where we empower others to face the impossible, inspire them to be impossible, and motivate them to do the impossible. I'm Matt, and today we are back with our first guest of the year, somebody I'm very excited to bring on this show, and somebody we've been very excited to have for a long time. She has done so much in her life, I could not even begin to give her an introduction, but we're going to dive into a lot of it today. A lot of her experiences growing up, the things she's learned, the things she's gained for herself in battling through all of her experiences in life, and now how she's leading the charge forward to grow new, state-of-the-art, comforting spaces for people facing disability, trauma, and all sorts of other challenges in life. And she helps them navigate these challenges, find new skills that they did not even know that they had, and overcome something that they thought could be incredibly debilitating. She is the executive director of the Amputee Center, the world's only center of its kind, built partially by and for amputees to help amputees navigate all aspects of their new life with this challenge they face. So I'm incredibly excited to bring on and introduce to you guys Kat Lang-Bigley. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I always like to go back and just kind of start at the beginning, because I feel like we've known each other for years now. I feel like I know so much about you, but every time I talk to you, I learn something new. I think even just upstairs, you were telling me new stories that I had no idea about. So I kind of want to go back to the beginning, because I know you've traveled all around the country and all around the world with different experiences that you've had. But are you originally from this area? Did you grow up here?
Yep.
Okay.
I was born and raised here. Yep.
Okay, in Parkersburg or?
At Churchtown.
Oh, wow, okay.
Uh-huh.
I know exactly where Churchtown is. I didn't know that.
So I was raised on a dairy farm.
What was that like?
I'll tell you, it's the work ethic. Mm-hmm. That's what it is, right? Mm-hmm. It was great. And I'll tell people, I had a great childhood. It was animals and dogs and cats and mm-hmm. cows and sheep and 4-H and all of that stuff, and a big family. And my oldest son, he's just like, you're trying to recreate your childhood. And I tell people as they lean towards homesteading, I'm just like, oh my God, that was my childhood. Mm-hmm. We grew everything. I literally was raised in the 80s, 90s, as if I was in the 40s and 50s. I actually didn't know that you bought canned stuff at a store.
Oh, wow.
That's how stocked, we
that's pretty intense.
Everything. I didn't know that even the mall existed.
Wow.
It was a very, and we never went to town. We rode the bus to Fort Fry, so that was through the woods the other direction. Mm-hmm. But maybe I went into town twice a year.
That's wild.
Yeah, so I was
in the 80s and 90s.
Really sheltered, and Catholic community. I remember riding my school bus, and I was probably 12, and a little girl got on the bus, and I was like, this isn't my cousin, and she doesn't go to church with me.
Who is this person?
What are you doing here? So that's an example of how sheltered I was. But you got off the school bus, you had time to get a snack, and you had to get to the barn. Yeah. We milked the cows, took care of the baby calves, built fence. And then it led into, watching my older siblings with 4-H projects. So there was no doubt that was going to be my life, right? And then, it's so funny with work ethic, because my mom, I remember being at a dinner party or something when I was 22, and I heard my mom talking to someone, and she said, we knew Catherine wasn't going to be a farmer, but she always did her work. I was like, okay. And
of all the things you can instill into a child, probably hard work and a good work ethic, that's about the top of the list.
And passion and caring.
Yeah.
There was this, I said my dad, to watch, they wouldn't stop, right? There was just this really weird part of my personality too. I remember seeing a guy in my teenage years complaining he was cold. And I had this moment where I was like, I actually didn't realize men could be cold, hot, or tired. That
you probably just never saw that.
Is the level of men that I was raised by.
Yeah.
Like, I had no clue.
Well, in that area especially too, I mean, you know, everybody was farmers. Like, everybody had big family. Well, and if you're a Lang too, you know, if we trace it back far enough, we're probably related somehow, because Lauren's a Lang. So she's Jack and Janet's granddaughter. So it's it's everybody was so interconnected, and it had to be this massive like community effort to basically make everything happen for everybody else. And you know, there's very much that mindset in that area specifically, but kind of throughout a lot of the Mid-Ohio Valley about this just very like head down, work hard, you know, earn everything you have. And there's a lot of beauty and a lot of goodness to that, but then there's a lot of other side to that where you don't talk about problems, you don't talk about pain, you don't talk about, you know, emotions, all these things that you just don't talk about, you don't acknowledge. And while there can be like a lot of you know, I feel like we can respect that, especially as like Americans. We're really drawn to people who can, you know, basically suffer without complaining in any sense. We have to have this balance of being able to process it as well.
So when I was in high school, you know, and I'm filling out my work or my paperwork to freshman year, my sister comes running over to me and she checks off FFA. Yeah. And I was like, so I guess I'm doing FFA now, right? Because I knew I wasn't going to be a farmer, right? So my path of what you're saying is that then I started looking at agricultural communications. So that was where I was leading towards in what am I going to major in? Because I knew I didn't want to be a farmer, but I wanted to speak for them. Yeah. You know, I wanted to speak for, like, whether it be journalism or TV or radio, and so, you know, I went down that path of applying to Ohio University or Ohio State University and OU, and going to the community college with communications and things like that. I didn't end up taking that path, but it was that same idea of, you know, this is such a important skill and art. How can we communicate better for them? But, you know, the way that I look at it as I matured and got older and moved in town and didn't have a farm, my only sibling that didn't have a farm, I was like, well, somebody has to go to the farmer's market. You know, somebody has to go do the other jobs and then be happy to walk up to a farmer at the farmer's market and go, I'm happy to pay this because I know the hard work that it took to get it. So I evolved. So that's really where my, like, the history of that coming up, you know, evolved into, well, why aren't you a farmer now, you know? But I did go back because I did 4-H camp and everything, and people would ask me, because of my fitness and background, you know, I started teaching line dancing at age 15 at 4-H camp. So one of the things that I've discovered over the years when people ask me questions about teaching fitness was, you know, putting your body on display, being in front of people. And I'm like, literally, it never bothered me. Yeah. Because from a young age, I stood there and went, right foot, left foot, left foot, you know?
Just something you were drawn to, it seems like, even like in your own way back then.
Yeah. So that set the groundwork for, you know, then when I stepped into, when opportunities came to me to teach fitness, I was like, okay, cool. Like, it was just a different hat. It was just like, I can get in front of people. I have public speaking skills, like, you know, 4-H, FFA, those things, and my parents. I mean, my mom was always like, you speak up, you tell people what you need, you know, you want to dance, you can walk across the floor and ask that guy to dance. I'm like, okay, Mom. Like, you know, like I had this, there was never a dialogue that wasn't like fully confident. Yeah, that's awesome to be able to like instill that into someone of that age, because I feel like today, to contrast it in so much of society, that there's that is a very prevalent thing that a lot of kids seriously struggle with. It's a huge challenge. And I know you have, 6 kids? I do.
Correct? Yeah, that's amazing. And so I guess, you know, fast forwarding a little bit, you think back to yourself as a teenager in those times and how your mom was able to instill those values in you. In today's world with the internet and social media and all of these other things that were not obstacles, were not challenges, you know, back then, how do you still work to instill some of those same values in your kids today?
So, my kids have a strong martial art background. I'm a black belt. Their father's a black belt. And so that right there, that groundwork is priceless.
Yeah.
There's just something about exposing your kids to that type of physical movement at a young age, that it just happens. They're just confident. They're confident in their bodies. But there's also a lot of things that, like, if I look at them and say, if I didn't think you could do it, I wouldn't ask you to.
Mm-hmm.
So as opposed to being like, well, you're pushing me to do something, or it's like, I believe you can do it. That's why I'm pushing you.
Yeah.
You know, if you hit, and my kids have had, you know, things they couldn't do, you know, so it was like, okay, this wasn't for you, but we can try something else, you know? And I think that what I say to people a lot too is we're modeling the behaviors that we want our children to see. So when my kids, it's so funny to say it out loud. So the older kids didn't see me physically moving a lot because I was pregnant. So I had 5 kids in 9 years. So my 3...
It's a really quick turnaround.
Yeah. So my 3 oldest didn't see how active I was before. Mm-hmm. And so then when I was about 35, I discovered slacklining. And I would look it up on YouTube. I would watch, like, how do you hook it up to a tree? And then I would go down to Muskegon Park and figure it out.
Yeah.
And I would watch another video and figure it out. And so I got to a point where I literally, at one point, I lived just a couple blocks from Muskegon Park, and I had a bike and a basket. And you know, I was 35 years old with kids from ages 5 to 15. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm going to the park to play.
Yeah.
Are you coming along? Right? Like, they saw me go, okay, you're going to go, you know, have dinner at your grandma's. I'm going to the gym. You know, they're out in their soccer practice, and I walk round and round and round the field. I can still see them. They know I'm close. So I think it's such a big thing. It's not one thing. You know, what your question is, it's not one thing.
Yeah.
It's instilling in them that you believe in them, that you wouldn't push them to something that you didn't believe they could do. And then it's so much of modeling the behaviors of prioritizing your own health and wellness.
Yeah. It almost kind of seems like, especially when they're young and growing up, they kind of have to basically, like, they have to rely on you as the mother and you know, as a father as well. They have to rely on the parents' kind of confidence and their belief, because they're especially when they're really young, they may be too young to have that themselves, and so they have to almost like feel that from you first, and then it kind of teaches them how to develop that for themselves.
And I run a couple groups for women, and this is a huge subject, especially now that you have a daughter.
Yeah.
Is that I had to get right with myself, with my own confidence, with my own insecurities, before my daughter realized that I wasn't, right? Because I had 3 boys first. I grew up on a farm. My nickname was Jake. Okay?
Oh, wow.
Like, let's get a vision. I'm a strong body. I carry a lot of muscle on me. I mean, I walked like I was carrying 2 5-gallon buckets, whether I was or not. Okay? So I grew up around boys. My dad, like, my brother's 10 years older than me. So there was never a, like, stop and wait for a man to do it for you. Yeah. It was like, chores need done, go do them, right? So I had all of this stuff. Well, then I had 3 boys, and it was all of this, and I was a boxer, and I'm like in there getting a bloody face and all stuff, and then I'm like, whoa, I'm having a girl. I gotta get right up here. Yeah. I got to make sure that I love myself, and that what I'm saying to, and for my boys, so that they are gravitating to women later in their lives that are also confident, right? But you know, a mom had said to me, you know, that she was just like talking about how much she hated her body, and you know, and her young son was like, so when are you gonna love your body? Yeah. And that just stuck with me. And that was when I was a really young mom. And I was like, okay, you know, it wasn't about ego or like flaunting or anything, but I would like go in, get dressed for a party and be like, well, doesn't get better than this, you know, like, you know. And so those struggles of worrying about body image and gaining weight in pregnancy and getting my body back and eating mindfully, you know, I was fully aware that my kids were watching me all the time. Mm-hmm. So that idea of wanting your boys to grow up and be good partners to strong, confident females, and wanting my daughter, which it worked, right, to grow up and be strong and confident and be able to walk through the world and not be worried about things they can't change, you know. Yeah. Even there's pressure after her, maybe before Dash, there was pressure to get breast implants. And I was like,
does that just come from society?
When I was married.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, well, I guess all the other wives are doing it. And, you know, and I like went back and forth, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, wow. And what do I say when she looks at me? I was like, that I had to alter my body for someone. I mean, I was like, nope, never. You know, but the fact that like the flyer was handed to me, you know, the fact that like the consultation could have happened.
Oh yeah.
And you know, and I went, you know, for my checkup after having my kids, and my doctor's like, you know, you look good, are you feeling okay? And I'm just like, no, like I feel fat, I feel like my body is ravaged from having kids, you know, all of this stuff. And I look back and I'm like, that was 10 years ago, and thank God I had the resources to kind of get me back in line and like stay focused, you know, hit your goals, that kind of thing. But it didn't happen magically. I had to reach out and find those people. I had to reach out and find those resources to keep me like, I don't want to walk in a room and somebody go, wow, look at that skinny mom. I want them to be like, that's a strong mom.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't matter, you know, what, but I had to get there and get there. And that was before Pinterest and TikTok and somebody else telling me.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so having a daughter is what really kind of like shifted me into taking accountability for the way that I move through the world.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear you talk about that subject, because we literally just recorded and released a podcast last week on how to increase self-value and self-worth, because we feel that it's literally the most it's the most lacking resource we have in the world today, across at least the society we live in here. And we see it so often in people, even people who we look up to and who we idolize, you know, in certain ways. People who are incredibly gifted, incredibly skilled, incredibly talented, and who work really hard and have all of these attributes, and yet they have this one thing that is just crushing them and tearing them down, and it's their own self-value. And so we've been pondering on this for a long time of like, how did we get here as society? But it's something that pretty much everybody either actively struggles with or has struggled with. And even the people who have struggled with it in the past probably still have minor struggles with it, you know, even today. It's something we've worked very hard in ourselves to try to correct and to try to work on and try to build up. But it was great for us to have a discussion on it last week, because we want people to build more self-value for themselves. And, you know, it's not an arrogant thing to do. It's you can be humble and still have self-value at the same time. We believe that 100%. But it's this idea of being able to look at yourself in the mirror. Imagine staring at yourself in the mirror and being extremely happy and loving everything you look at.
I do.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
No,
And that's the thing.
To get there,
it sounds so wild to be able to do that.
So relating it, and you don't know this part of my life, so relating it to my journey into acro yoga and slacklining. So Yoga Slackers is a company that does yoga poses on slacklines. So it's a 1-inch piece of webbing that you put in between two trees.
That's like laughable. I can't even imagine being able to do that. That's amazing.
So as soon as the weather gets nice,
that's amazing. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Take you
You're gonna have to strap me into a harness.
I mean, we can do that now. We have the equipment.
That's true.
So it's a 1-inch piece of webbing that you put between two trees, and it's about the distance off the ground that your couch would be.
It's 1 inch wide. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Sometimes it's 2 inches, but I prefer the 1 inch. So, rock climbers in the 90s invented slacklining, so they would get bored or they would have to rest like in between hikes. So they used ratchet straps, and they basically walked on a ratchet strap, right? But if you come down on it, ratchet straps like cut your skin, like they're rough, right? So they developed material that wasn't as rough on the body. So a company was created called Yoga Slackers, where you take yoga poses and you do them on the line.
Wow.
So, and I'm going to tell you in the world, and I don't know the exact number, I think it's around 170 now. There's 170 Yoga Slacker certified teachers in the world, and I'm one of them.
Wow.
Half and half, male to female. Organically, because nothing about slacklining makes you better if you're male or female.
Yeah.
I loved it because
even playing field.
And the look of the physiques and stuff are nothing. Like you could look across the line of everybody that I did my training with, and there's nothing completely similar.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, why, I was like, okay, what? Well, hold up. You're 35. You're a mom of 5 in Ohio. What? Why did you start this? Because somebody believed in me. Somebody believed I could do it. So a friend of mine that lived on the West Coast knew about Yoga Slackers, and he said, I believe you could do this. And I was like, you are crazy. But someday I'll go out there and try it. And he goes, no. And a slackline appeared on my front porch. And so I'm looking at it and I'm like, I have to figure this out.
Yeah.
Because somebody believes in me. I was just like, what? What? Okay. So I figured it out. And I started going to the park, and I had a huge kickboxing group right then, mostly females. And so I would say, okay, you go, we're all doing kickboxing and kettlebells and running and working out and doing mud runs. I'm like, everybody meet me at the park. I'm going to teach you how to slackline. So it immediately became, I was learning it while, let's try out this skill. Hey, I saw this on Instagram. And so I started putting a couple pictures on Instagram, a couple short videos. And so the Yoga Slacker company reached out to me and said, hey, we want you to come to our teacher training. And I was like, I'm not a yoga teacher. I mean, at that point I taught Tai Chi and Qigong, I taught kickboxing, and I was a black belt. And they're like, you know what, but it's okay. And so they had done a tour of 2015, and they wanted to say they taught in every single state in 2015. And so I was great for them because we hit Ohio and West Virginia in one weekend, right? And so they had come here and met my community. And I said, I've never left my kids that long. It's 11-day training. No way. And they're like, well, if you don't say yes, we're going to come back to your community and we're going to talk to everybody that we met that loves you, and we're going to get you to say yes. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, I can't leave my kids that long. I can't afford it. And they're like, we're going to make it work. I said, okay. So they set me up payments. They made it happen. My friends who are still my dear friends now, that help me every day with Lily, they drove me to Virginia, dropped me off, came back in 11 days and picked me back up. But that self-value of that, like, what a crazy journey, right? And in that process, we did a mix of acro yoga. So that's the, partner yoga. And I'm looking at all these females, and generally speaking in the acro yoga world, it's male, female. It's couples. And I had just left my marriage of doing fitness business with my ex-husband. And I'm like, no, I don't want to go down that road again. And so I looked at all these females, and they're teeny tiny. and they're gymnasts. I mean, I'm 5'9". I walk around between 160 and 190. Nobody knows the difference because I'm tall enough to carry it. And so that value of this body, where I went, I can be both.
Yeah.
I can be the base. I have farm strength. I have dude strength. Like, I can lift people up over top of me with my hands, with my feet. I have big feet. I used to be like, oh, no.
Yeah.
My feet are great for acro yoga. And so it was through finding these physical movements that made me fall in love with my body and everything that it does. Beyond carrying 6 babies. But you know what I mean? Like, it was like, oh wow, and here's this whole community that I can travel to a yoga studio 5 hours from here. I show up by myself. I just pick somebody in the room that looks tiny and athletic and would probably listen to me. And I just would teach whole weekend acro yoga workshops by myself.
Yeah.
I didn't have to bring bring the dude, bring the partner. No. And some people were like, how did you become a traveling yoga teacher? And I was like, I just started traveling and teaching.
You just did it.
Yeah. Well, and when I was at that long training that the yoga slackers took me to, my emotional partner, because they put you with somebody to check in with you every day, because it was really hard training. Mm-hmm. Like, it was harder than my black belt. Like, it was really hard. Wow. And so it was a couple in Cincinnati. It was the man of the couple, and he looked at me and he said, "You're a yoga teacher." And I was like, "No, I'm not." He said, "You're a yoga teacher." "I'm not a yoga teacher." And so when I got home from training, it was about 3 weeks later, he said, "I want to FaceTime." And he goes, "We need Tai Chi and Qigong in our studio in Cincinnati. We know you can't pay $5,000 to be a yoga teacher. So if you come to Cincinnati and you teach while you're here, stay at our house, eat with us, no cost, right? Like, just share our space, teach in our studio. While you're here, join into teacher trainings, and you'll be a certified yoga teacher." And so I did that for about 3 years.
Wow, that's a lot of time.
Yeah.
So did you move to Cincinnati for that time?
No.
You're just traveling back and forth?
So I was teaching at Marshall University.
Oh gosh. So this is the part I'm talking about. Like, I learned something new. I'm learning a lot of new things today.
So it worked out at that point for my, and I mean, I've spent 10 years not talking about my divorce, but at that point, we went to like that standard schedule of every other weekend. So on Thursday mornings, I would drop the kids off at school and I would drive to Huntington, and I would teach at Marshall on Thursdays, Fridays, and then if it was my weekend, I'd come back home Friday night. But if it wasn't my weekend, I would stay Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I have a lovely community in Huntington that I love, the yoga group there, Huntington and Charleston. But then when the teacher training started, I would do Thursday, Friday teaching at Marshall, and then I would drive to Cincinnati and do Saturday, Sunday teacher training, and then drive back.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
A lot of mileage.
it was. I'm telling you, one time I drove my sister's junker car a couple times. My car was broke down. I went a lot of times with like $5 in my checking account. Like I did not. I couch surfed. I just immediately in that yoga community in Huntington, I was like, I need to stay with somebody. You know, I didn't. It was no like path. I just was like, I got to make this work, and people just appeared to help me make it work.
What was driving you in that time? Because that's a very, for most people in society, that is a horrifying place to be in. This thought of like, there's not much money in your checking account. You have a car that may or may not make it, to your destination. You're giving up hours of sleep. You're giving up, time away from your family or your kids or your community or whatever it is, and you're putting everything you have, everything you are on the line for something you love. And so that's a horrifying thought for a lot of people. But what's driving you in those moments? What's keeping you going, helping you make those drives and put yourself out there in that manner?
completely delusional optimist. I had a lot of professional goals. And I knew that I was really good at what I did. And in my marriage, it was, I was pregnant or breastfeeding for 12 years. And it was like, okay, when you're done breastfeeding, you can go get your yoga teacher training, or you can go, do the things you want to do. And that's not what happened. And so the breakdown, the demise of that, of building, because we had a really successful martial art business. I ran a studio, I ran a gym, we did powerlifting, we did kettlebells, and so I was like, yeah, but wait, I thought it was my turn. It's my turn, And so I just kind of was like, well, okay, no, this is my turn. And it was do it or die, like be amazing or be nothing. It is literally the only way that I didn't go into an extremely deep depression, was I had hope. And God, everywhere I showed up, people were like, Kat, hi, yeah, they told us you'd be here. Do you want to sleep on my couch tonight? And I just, and still to this day, I keep in contact with a lot of them. Like, it was kind of like the end of like a sitcom, at the end of that time of my life, we all dispersed in other parts of the country, right? And they're married and they have kids, and we kind of, but in that bubble of time, I felt like I had no other choice, right? Like I had to do this. I had to break generational cycles. I had to break my vision of what marriage and life and family look like. I had to prove to the world that I was doing this for me, because there was accusations that I was like wanting to be with another person or move on, which that never happened. I've never remarried or anything, so it was I was just stubborn, and I just knew that's what I wanted to do, and I was hungry. At that time, right at the same time, my family's restaurant had opened, the coffee house had opened. Like, no joke, I lived on scraps. Like, I worked hours at that coffee house. I stayed late and painted. There would be like a mismade sandwich. I'd be like, "That's what I'm eating tonight." I would get to the house on the nights when I didn't have kids and move the couch beside the fireplace, turn it on, and not heat the whole rest of the house, and go back to the coffee house, shower, dress, work in between that, that hiccup time. I don't know, delusional optimism.
No, I think that's a good phrase for it. It's a powerful place to be. We have a saying that we like to say on this show a lot, and across a lot of what we do, and it's this idea that your potential is your responsibility. And what we mean in that is that we see an unlimited amount of potential in everybody we encounter. And our goal at the end of the day, and this is woven into our mission and vision, is to help people see that potential within themselves. Because if you get to a point where you can see that potential in yourself, and where it sounds like you were, like you knew you could do that. You didn't even know where you were going, but you knew what you could make happen.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see that in yourself, it becomes this fire that you can't escape, and it burns with so much passion and so much purpose that you almost can't help but give everything you have to it, because you know that at the end of it you will have done something beyond anything you could have ever dreamed. You will have inspired and motivated and changed lives in ways you could have never dreamed. And most importantly, you will have helped people to see that same potential within themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you see that potential in yourself, you see it in everyone around you. You stop seeing people as they are, and you start seeing them as what you know they can be.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is such a huge cornerstone to this dilemma of how do we increase self-value? You had stated something earlier about how martial arts was so huge, especially in your children. And I think that comes back to the very first step of building self-value, and that's building confidence, which is the best way to do that is to build, as Jordan Peterson likes to say, build competence. You get to where you can do something, and then you get to where you can do it proficiently, and then you get to do where you can do it very good. That's going to, by default, spill into some confidence. And it can be anything.
You get so good at it that you can't do it wrong anymore?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You get good at martial arts, and because you got really, really, really good at one thing, you now know inside that you have this capacity to get good at things. And that's going to spill over to every other area, and it's a kind of a stepwise journey after that. But I think that is such a huge first step and a cornerstone to all of this. But then taking that further to being able to see your potential in all things, and to be able to hone in on this idea of, well, yes, you've got unlimited potential at your fingertips, but how do you know what to do with that? How do you know where to go with it? How do you know where to start? How do you know what to chase? If you're somebody who doesn't know your passion, like you may have minor interests in certain areas, but if you don't know what your passion is, how do you find it? And that's something we've always just described as exactly basically what you did, is just keeping yourself open to the opportunities and seeing particularly the challenges you face as opportunities, because things are going to come up. You're going to find things to chase. You can go down one road for a little bit. It may not end up being the one thing that you were totally obsessed with. Like for you got into slacklining, and while you love slacklining, it's a great activity for you. You got really good at it. It didn't end up being like the one single thing, that you focused. But it's what led you to acro yoga, and then to being a yoga teacher, and then on to so many other things in life. So there's nothing wrong with going down a path and, going far down that path, and then correcting the direction a little bit, changing the direction a little bit. And you constantly get this back and forth of direction until eventually you hit this dead center and you find this passion. And it's not even a direction that you end up moving in so much as it is this feeling, this mood, this attitude that you set for every room that you walk into in your life. And I think that story is just like a perfect example of everything we strive for. And it's amazing to hear that, because I know how many people out there that's a horrifying worst case scenario for them, to think about being in a position like that, where there's so much unknown, so much uncertainty.
I will have to give, and this is along the path, right? There was a family who had a house on the market that was for sale, and they took it off the market, that I was able to move into to restart my life. There were amazing earth angels that just lined up for me to get to a place where I could authentically be me. And I was there for 5 years, and then was able to buy my own house, right? Which is huge, right? So that I couldn't have done it along the way if I wasn't always in a place of what else is possible. Who else in this room needs to feel like they are welcome, because those connections of me genuinely just liking people, means that I made them feel seen, and then they go, wow, how can we help you? And I go, actually, my life's falling apart. Glad you asked. And I didn't question why they show up into my life, or but I look back and I'm just like, wow, how divine that person was exactly. And I could tell each story, it'd take another 2 hours, but each person lined up. But the one mentor, she would look at me, and I would be having everything. She'd be like, how cool is that? I'd be like, what do you mean? She'd be like, how cool is that? How cool is that? She's like, how cool is that? What if the toilet overflowed? And you can be like, that gives me the opportunity to mop my floor. And I have the ability to go buy some bleach and some mops. How cool is that? The kid just colored all over the wall with crayons. You have a house and you have crayons and your kid is healthy enough to do it. How cool is that? And so she would just take these like really ridiculous scenarios. And I'd be like, but I just want to marinate in my sadness. and it's interesting because her history was that she was a power lifter and she had gotten herself to like the most, amazing level. I'm not sure what the accolade was, but had been an active alcoholic and destroyed it all. And I forgot about that. And I forgot about her story until, I don't know, a month or two ago, I was thinking about her. When she came into my life, she was just like, had just kind of gone through her own growth. And she showed up just at the right time. She had a house full of furniture that she was like, that was my ex and I'm never going back to that house. Do you want this furniture in this house? Yeah. Right? It was like I suddenly had a dresser and beds and stuff. And so there was all of this amazing alignment, or what you would call like in, the yoga world, manifestations or alignment or divine timing. And so I didn't spend a lot of time each point, but I would just be like, I'm open to the blessing and I'm grateful for it. And that I now at 46, now that I've been on this path for 11, 12 years of this journey, is I want to be in a place to say, like, now it's my time to give back. Mm-hmm. Now it's my time to say, okay, I understand you're freaking out. I get that. But let me tell you, like we're going to take some time to see some positives. We're also going to honor that right now it feels pretty awful. But then moving forward, I was even thinking, as you were saying, like, my experiences, most people would never do, like boxing, like getting punched in the face. But I'll tell you what, I knew I had to do it. I had to do it. I had to get in the ring and fight. I had to get my black belt. I knew in my core there was no way I was going to do anything else until I did these things. Why? Right?
Yeah.
But I hyper-focused. Now, do I want to ever box or get in the ring again? Nope. Right? But that's what I'm saying. Like, you can let some stuff go, where I think people are afraid with their, I'm not good enough, I didn't finish it, I'm not going to finish it, this is just what I was told when I was young, I never finished anything. But it set up the groundwork for who I am now, right? So, that mental place of being, and when I did have that opportunity with that one mentor, she hooked me up with a powerlifting coach. So we started powerlifting, and it hurt. It hurt.
Yeah.
It hurt so bad.
As it can.
And I had two epiphanies, two things happen. I took all my kickboxing ladies, and the coach said, I have never had a group of women do so well and be so prepared for me. Like, they listened. Kat had their body mechanics figured out. They knew how to square up their hips. They knew how to roll their shoulders back. So a huge compliment. And I never went back, right? Like, she was like, but I've never had so many people come from the same place that just got how to move the body. And I was for myself, I was at that edge of yoga and powerlifting. And I was like, I can't do both. They're two different goals, right? Yeah. And so I went down the yoga path. But again, I never said to myself, oh, you started something and you didn't finish it, and blah, blah, blah. I didn't do that, which is where some people get caught up in their mind of saying, okay, well, maybe, but from that experience, maybe you put yourself on another path, or you learn something about yourself. And powerlifting's not for everybody.
No. And that's exactly right. And we talk about this all the time. It's not about the experience or the achievement of it. It's about the building of yourself into who you can become. And all of these things, whatever they may be, are really just devotions or practices or tools used to help manifest that, to help build that person. Mm-hmm. And so there's seasons to everything, like I'm pretty deep into powerlifting right now, but I know there's going to be a day where I step back from that and I choose to pursue something else in a slightly different direction. That's perfectly okay. And I'm going to be fully content with that because I've got specific goals now. But even if those things never happen, it doesn't matter. It's not about that. It's about what we call the being impossible. That's why our slogan is be impossible, not do the impossible. It has nothing to do with like what you end up making happen. It has everything to do with who you build along the way. You're going to build the person who's capable of that impossible thing.
So I fought in Tough Woman.
Yeah, oh, really? I didn't know that.
So Ty was 10 months old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was 10 months old. So I left the hospital at like 170 pounds. And I had to weigh in at 142 or less.
Oh, gosh.
To be in lightweight.
Oh, my gosh.
Talk about your weight loss plan.
Wow.
So I was determined. And I went in and I fought. And I won my first 2 matches. And I lost my third by decision. And at one point, my brother-in-law at the time walked up to me and, like you did it. And whatever he said is what you're saying there. And that like, I did this.
Yeah.
So every time you hit one of those personal goals, that weight, that challenge, the way that you do it, it is yours. Mm-hmm. It is yours, never to be taken from you, ever. I knew right before I walked into the ring for that last fight, I didn't want to be there. Yeah. I did not want to be there. I did not want to be there. I was done. But I was like, 3 more minutes of my life, win, lose, or draw, nobody can ever take this from me. And I think that at age 22, right? At 22, as a female, and saying like, I did this, I trained, I showed up, nobody can take this from me, is some of that I think sometimes people miss that mark of like, you showed up, you did this, even if you didn't get that personal goal, or even if your goal has to change, that's still okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's still absolutely okay. But yeah, so that was fun.
Yeah. Well, that's 100% exactly what we're talking about here, because, on the day of the fight, that's really just like the icing on the cake. Like that's the pinnacle. That's the day where you get to celebrate and just enjoy the experience you put in. And yeah, you give everything you've got from what you built, and maybe it comes out the way you want, maybe it doesn't. But when you come back and reflect on that 10, 20, however many years later, everything you're going to remember about that has almost nothing to do with the day itself. Mm-hmm. And it has everything to do with the 10 months that led to that day. Mm-hmm. And you can sit and remember those times of going through what had to be a grueling diet and nutrition plan, and going through what had to be an even more grueling training plan, and everything that led you there, and what you learned about yourself and your capacity to work and your capacity to endure pain and your capacity to take on mental challenges. Everything you learn from that is what built you into the person who could then go on and chase the next thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the bloody face and like coming through the crowd and people booing me when I won. They cheered the first time. The second one, they booed me because the girl was shorter than me. I don't know. But, so I was like, whoa, this is interesting. But then, so I went on from that, and, I've got the bloody face picture, which is fun. But then I fought at the Arnold Classic. So they have in the martial art, they have like San Shao, which is basically kickboxing. Mm-hmm. So it's a ring with no edges. It's just, so it's the size of a boxing ring, but no ropes. Okay. So, like in boxing, you get up by the ropes and you can rest, and until you move around. There's no ropes.
You just fall out.
No, yeah, you fall out of it.
Oh my God.
So the tradition is almost like American Gladiator, to go off the edge. So San Shao comes where like you would get like 1 point for a landed punch, 2 points for a landed kick, 3 points if you throw them, and 4 points if you shove them off the edge.
Oh wow! Now,
of course, it was very soft and very safe.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so I won gold medal there, and I met Arnold, and yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. So that was my goal. I was like tough man. Arnold Classic, fought. Even a couple of years later, I worked the corner for one of the guys that trained with us. So that was super cool. And then black belt. So then I trained for my martial art black belt. And in that moment, you know, after my black belt, I think from getting punched in the face a lot, like I just bleed faster. So like at the Arnold Classic, you know, the people in my corner were like yelling, "Don't stop the fight," right? They're like, "She's a bleeder. Don't stop the fight." I'm like, oh. So, but at my black belt, you know, I'm taking out my mouthpiece and I see, you know, someone I love, I think it was my friend Wendy, go to take my picture. And so I smile. So there's this photo of me.
Yeah.
I've taken off my mouthpiece, but I'm full out smiling. So I keep it on my refrigerator.
And your teeth are red and just blood soaked.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
So my children have grown up. When they go for the milk,
they see that every
that's
time.
What they see. Yeah. I've moved it around a couple of times, but that's it. And so then I had a couple weeks later on my friend's brown belt test, I whipped off my gloves. I'm like, man, I don't feel very good, and this is just blah blah blah. I'm losing my. I was pregnant. So my son Jackson, that's the joke, is that I was about 6 weeks pregnant with him when I took my black belt test. So yeah, so I mean, that's I just wild. Hitting those goals, like I just was right there because Jackson was born, and then right after that, I was pregnant with Jet. Honestly, there's nothing about my life that I would have ever got back into black belt shape. You know, but I was eating 6 times a day. I had maybe 9% body fat. You know what I mean? Like I was the healthiest version of myself to be pregnant, you know, and Jackson's pregnancy was wonderful, and he's a happy, healthy adult man now. But yeah, so, you know, all of those like little things that like, does everybody have to walk into the ring and get punched in the face? No. But it's that when you pick one goal and you show up and do it, let yourself be proud of yourself. Yeah.
That's that key to building that self-worth we talk about, you know, because do you ever want to go in a ring and get punched in the face again? No. But you know that you can.
I could take a punch.
Yeah. And so now anytime you have an experience in life, you know, you be out in public somewhere and somebody starts yelling at you about something stupid or dumb, like, you know that you could step in a ring and take a punch. Not that you want any sort of violence towards that person or around that person, but it gives you this innate sense of confidence and assuredness about who you are and what you're capable of and what you can do, that it allows you to basically just totally discredit their opinion or anything they may think of you.
Yeah. And it makes me ridiculous because I really believe in myself.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, people are like, "You're doing what?" I'm like, I'm doing the next thing. And so like along that path of, you know, finding your way and then showing up, setting the goal and doing it. And then where does your dialogue go? Like I always heard people say the way you talk to your children becomes their inner voice. And so when we say, where do people lack self-worth? Where do they get down? Where do they go? Are they willing to do the work? Right. And I mean, I'm a certified life coach and well-being coach. And I actually worked in mental health for several years before coming to the Amputee Center. And sometimes that's the route you have to get to, is say, you know, when you hit that point and you have a tipping point, who is that voice? Is it you or is it somebody else? Because it's probably somebody else. You know, and are you willing to take the time to say, where's this voice coming from? And I'm going to tell you, go away. You know, like that is not because we can change what, you know, like, why can't I be optimistic? Why can't I tell people like, yeah, I know I'm really good at what I do. You know, I remember the first time I heard someone say, I'm not going to marry this person and move out of town because I have this business here and whatever. I was in my 20s and I heard her say, you know, because I'm really good at what I do. And I went, I've never told myself that before. Now, was she trying to inspire me? Nope. But does she know she's inspired me? Nope. Did I want to grow up to be her? Nope. But that one little thing, like, I'm really good at what I do. Who says that about themselves? Because we're taught to keep it down, right? Oh, I'm okay. Oh, I could be better. Or like, why do we do this? And where can we
get... Well, the issue is we've taken humility and we've made our idea of humility into a lack of self-worth. And while humility is a good virtue and a good thing to have and to hold, we need to not make it about our self-worth. You don't have to diminish your self-worth to be humble or your self-value.
I mean, what do you think of me, right? Like, am I humble?
Oh, yeah.
Am I kind?
I think
am I
incredibly
caring
so.
and giving? Yeah.
Because the key to humility is knowing that you could be better. And that's always true.
No, yeah.
That's always true. And you're somebody who's still striving to grow and develop and learn in every way possible. And I see, that's where I see humility. You know, somebody who lacks humility thinks that they've made it, they're the pinnacle, like there's no way they could be better than they are now. Like, and I've never seen that in you. Like I've never seen a lack of humility in you. Like, I've always seen humility because you're so dedicated to your own progress, your own personal growth, and your own development. Like, that's been a cornerstone thing I've seen in you since the day I met you. And I think now that we've gone back and kind of seen a lot of your life experiences to this point, like, that's been true all along. And so you're living proof that you can have massive amounts of humility and a massive amount of self-value and self-worth at the same time.
What's the quote of, like, be willing to look stupid learning something new?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I actually shared a thing about skiing. I was like, I've had 5 professional lessons. I'm really bad, okay? I'm horrible at skiing. But I've had really cool experiences going, and my 2 kids that do love it are rock stars, right? Yeah. So, you know, but I was willing to kind of look stupid while I figured it out.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Well, and how important is that for not just your kids, but anybody who looks up to you? How important is it for them to see you go out and be willing to put yourself on display at something you are really bad at, you know?
Yeah. Over and over again.
That's huge, because that
stop doing this.
Shows them, it teaches them that, hey, it doesn't matter what I look like. It doesn't matter what people think about me. None of these things matter. What matters is the fact I'm willing to go out and chase it. I'm willing to go out and do it. I'm willing to go out and try to get better at it. You know, and by them seeing that confidence in you, they're going to immediately want to adopt that same thing for themselves, because they're going to want to emulate that. I think that's so cool. And it's wild to me. So recently, Lily's had all of these she's been just grow. It's like every day she changes at this point. Like, she's growing all these new skills, and just everything is just kind of blossoming out of her right now. It's so cool to see. But she recently, and it's just like 3 weeks ago, she just started like setting up on her own. And that was like 2 weeks ago. She got like really good at it, where she could do it for a long time. And so now she'll like sit up and play with toys and stuff. Well, she got these like rubber blocks for Christmas. And so we'd like build towers for her, and she'd go to grab a block and knock him down. And I don't even know how Lauren and I I don't know if it was like instinctual to us or whatever. And we just immediately started, like, without hesitation, anytime she'd knock the whole tower down, we just start like clapping and cheering for her and saying how proud we are of her for like knocking blocks down, you know? But what immediately, as soon as we started doing that, she gets this look on her face that it is pride is what it is. Like, you can't even call it something else. And she's 7 months old. And to know that we can help her feel proud of herself at 7 months old, that like hit me, for lack of a better term, like a ton of blocks. It hit me like a ton of blocks, because all of a sudden now I have this new responsibility. And it's not something that's scary to me. It's something that's exciting to me, because now I have the ability to be able to help my daughter feel proud of herself and help her, teach her how to be proud of herself. And it's like when I realized that, it was like I'd not ever had a greater responsibility in my life. And it just is another one of those things that like makes me realize how incredibly important everything I do is for her and around her.
And modeling that behavior,
Yeah.
like when she sees it, you don't have to say it. It's just who you are. And, you know, she's like, I think I even texted you right after she was born. I was like, so this is a completely different human.
Yeah.
Like she's going to teach you who she is. You, no matter what you think you want her to be, she's got her own path, and you kind of just get to be there for it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but it is so awesome when you can say like, and that's like, it's, if I didn't think you can do it, I wouldn't ask you to.
Yeah,
and so when they hit those points of that emotional maturity, you know, as they get older and they are in those moments where they're in the mud and they go, can I do this? How can I not do this? Right? When you hit those milestones of your life and go, am I really going to step out of this comfort zone and travel and teach and do these things? Can I do this? Can I not do this? How could I not do this? Yeah. Right? And that's where my mindset was, I'm going full force forward because I don't want to go backwards and I don't want to stay stagnant. Yeah. You know, so, you know, and every time that you're with somebody in the gym, every time you look at someone and you encourage them to reach a goal that fits them, you know, you can get that response from any athlete, anyone who goes, I didn't think I could do that. Or, oh, you know, like maybe an adult has never had somebody look at them the way that you looked at Lily and go, wow, good job.
Yeah.
You know, you did a thing.
And it's such a wild thing because like those experiences you highlighted in your life where somebody made you feel like they believed in you or they told you they believed in you. Like what a small thing for them to do from like if you look at like an effort scale, it took them very little effort to give that to you, but it's something that was so impactful for you. It changed the course of your whole life in some ways.
Yeah.
You know, and so that alone is a massive responsibility that we all carry to be able to affect the rooms we walk into and how we can, the knowledge and understanding and developing the skill to know that when we walk into any room, you will affect the people in there and you get to decide how. And when you see that kind of responsibility of like, I can help bring, you know, positive influence to every single person that I walk into. When you make that like kind of your default mind's program, like the amount of goodness that you and richness that you will bring people's lives is just unlimited. And what's always amazing about it is it doesn't take a lot of extra effort. Like sometimes you do get big, massive things like somebody pulling their house off the market to let you live it. Like that is a massive thing that takes lots of effort and sacrifice. But and those are amazing things to do, but it doesn't always have to be that. Like you don't have to, you know, you don't have to always go those routes. You know, it's the smallest things, like the smallest words, the smallest compliments, the smallest even gestures that
so
can
I think the
totally
people
change
that come
life.
into your life, right? Like, like you are that way because somebody showed you that bit of kindness, and every single time they do it, you're like, oh, that's how I want to be. That's who I want to be. This is mimicking the behaviors of who I'm. Like, I want people to feel the way that family made me feel, held, supported, right?
Yes.
Like, I want to. And I was in such a fog, I couldn't even have a conscious thought at that point. But like, yeah, so it's like, now how do you make that happen for other people? Because that also can be an epidemic, can be an evolution of how we start to interact with humans differently than how we've interacted in the past. Because, you know, I always say when it comes to somebody who's an abuser, if we dive into it, we identify abuse in any way, it is the movie Wicked. It is the any of the movies going into the bad parts of our stories, because all of those stories and all those movies are showing you, like the Grinch movie. What is that doing? It's showing you that if somebody is an abuser, they were abused. If somebody, so it's like, oh, so what we're used to seeing in the media now is starting to tell the backstory of the wicked stepsisters, the backstory of what are these fairy tales. So that's kind of cool, and I can appreciate it. But I go, yes, but if we plant the seeds of positivity and joy and love and support, and we are counteracting all of that negative stuff of why people are the way they are and blah, 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 and all that stuff, whose fault is it and why is it? I don't want to sit there and dig through it. Like, I worked in mental health. I don't even really like talk therapy very much, because I'm like, okay, well then if we dig down into that, I'm going to have to forgive that abuser because they were probably abused. And then we have to show compassion as we dig back. But if I say, I'm going to sit here now and pour all of that energy and redirect it positively out to the world and say, I recognize that that's probably your hang up, but I'm going to ask you to maybe let's change the dialogue we hear in our head. And it's such a strange redirection, because we're so used to the victim story and the where you came from and how you got there, and your story of cancer and at what age and all the stuff that led up to it. But it's like, when I walk up to you, that's not the first thing that comes to my mind. Because that's not, you didn't let that story define you. That is part of your story, but now you're a full-time working dad and beautiful baby and have a podcast, right? Because you took all of those things and redirected them. So I think that we can all strive to live an interesting life that has great stories. And, I love telling Dory stories, because she's always just like, oh my God, one more thing I didn't know about Kat. So, we could pull 10 more out of the bag, but it's like, have I been open to experiences, and there's times that I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not going to go down that path. That doesn't feel like the right thing for me right now. But it makes you stop and change the way that you interact with people. And yes, I want everybody to walk out of the room feeling like they got a big hug from me, whether or not I hug them.
I love that perspective, especially talk about the redirecting of abuse in your life. And I think you could even expand that to all forms of negativity. Because like in my life, I never really had like I had some horrible things happen to me, but it wasn't like abuse. Like I cancer isn't like abuse necessarily. So I've never really related it to that, but it was there were a lot of incredibly negative things that happened in that time. And abuse is certainly an extremely, negative thing that happens to people that can be crippling and so destructive for people, and something that they carry for so long in their lives. And I have a lot of empathy for people who do battle a lot of those things and have battled those things in their life. And I love how you talk about, rather than focusing so much on that experience and on that past and on those things that have happened that you can never change no matter how hard you try, rather than pouring all of your energy into that. Because to me, it's like, if you're pouring your energy into that, you're pouring your energy into something you can't change. You can slowly try to change your feelings about it. But what if you, like you say, flipped that around and looked forward to, how can I take all of this energy and this emotion and everything that happened to me in this time? How can I take that and flip it to change the script, to totally break that cycle and use it instead to bring positive influence to the world and those around me? Because
if you're really digging into empathy, you now will dig into it, but you're going to have so much empathy and compassion for the person that you think abused you in whatever way, right? Because there's always that story. So like, what changed me was to look at each story and say, they did the best that they could with the tools that they had. Maybe they didn't have a lot of tools. Yeah. But we move on, right? Like, that's how we get past it. That's how we move forward and set our goals for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And you could only approach each interaction with somebody with, wow, cool. This is a new interaction I'm having with somebody. You meet them where they are. And maybe they're not the person for you, or maybe you can't help them on their path, but like just to constantly on that path of like, okay, well then, move forward and go on into your next experience. Because I think that's where like the self-worth and the disappointment and everything is, that we all just hold on so tightly to what our expectation is going to be. Yeah. Well, I was supposed to turn out this way, or it didn't, and so I feel like that is a huge part of depression for a lot of people, is that if they can just let go of like, that's not how it turned out. Yeah. Your expectations create your own heartbreak. And so I'm not saying give up expectations, but be willing to adjust your sail.
Yeah. Like, that's so huge, because you talk about depression. When I was battling alcoholism at my worst point, I was entirely focused on my past and all of the negativity that was wrapped up in it, and trying to find a way to change that negativity. Like, that was my focus. That was what I was trying to escape. I was trying to escape that path or that past and try to reconcile it and try to figure it out and try to make sense of it. And alcohol was the vector that allowed me to do that, and then when I started to get things turned around and get on a better path and find better vectors, better means, better tools to coping with that emotion and that negativity and all of that energy, it allowed me to look forward and find direction. Yes, all this stuff happened to me, but here's where I can go from this point now. And now, looking back after doing this for so long, I've gotten to a point where I've been on this path for so long that I can look back at my past and all the negative things that happened to me, and I don't even wish that I hadn't experienced them. Right. Like, I almost, in a way, and I don't know if this is sick and twisted, but I actually look back and I'm so grateful for those experiences. Now, I don't want any kid to ever have to experience that again. I want them to be able to learn these skills in other ways. And that's a large reason of why we do everything we do with our media and the podcast. But I go back and I'm so grateful for those experiences, because all of the best moments of my life would have never happened without those experiences. And
studies have shown that a grateful heart is healthier.
Oh, yeah. I believe that 100%.
So, you literally, when we have gratitude, we change our DNA. We are, and that's where people are like, oh, yoga, I'm not flexible. I'm like, listen, it's not that. It is these new ways of saying and seeing things. Like, when we are grateful, we change our DNA. Yeah. When you wake up in the morning and you're like, grateful, right? And whatever it is, and the first few things that you say to yourself and who you put in your path and all of the, that the grateful heart, the volunteer heart, all of that stuff, time after time after time, study after study shows that's the stuff. Not being famous, not being popular, not being rich. It's that stuff that really changes the enzymes of the heart, changes our DNA, changes the way that our body moves, because we're grateful, because we're not, somebody pulled out in front of me in traffic and daggone it, I lost my leg, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So, this energy and this way that we move forward into life and the way that we look at things, it's not a destination. Like, I am like, no, I mean, I know that I'm going to keep continuing on this path, and I'm still going to get challenged to be grateful for stuff. But I have the skill set to lean that direction first, not the other direction first. Like, why me? And I'm going to lay here and marinate in it.
That's what I tell people all the time, is like, your mind is programmable. Your body is programmed. Like, literally, genetic code is more advanced than any computer code that's ever been written, but it's the same philosophy. And there's actually a whole field of science that I was fortunate to get to study this in school, called epigenetics. And it's literally being able to reprogram your DNA, because you have a certain amount of DNA code, but a very small percentage of it is expressed at any given time. Well, you can change what parts of it are expressed. And that is that results in mindset, that results in physical health and wellness, it results in spiritual health and wellness. There's all these parts that you can influence, and you can even change your own mind's default settings. I know that you can do it because I've done it myself. And I think when you can get to that point, that's where you can really start to reconcile a lot of the greatest negativity in your life, whatever it may be. You know, it's this idea, like you talk about, of walking into a room and immediately your mind goes to, how can I positively influence these people? You go to that without even thinking about it. It becomes woven into your subconscious, as opposed to walking into a room and wanting to hide from everyone because of how ashamed of yourself you are.
Yeah. I think like when I get, you know, we talk about trigger, so get triggered by something. I now am to the point that when somebody from my past, I feel trigger and I go into fight or flight, and I go, thank you for reminding me why I went through everything I went through to recreate my life. Thank you for that reminder. Yeah. And then I just set my phone down and walk away.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's taken a lot of great, amazing support and really great friends and people who know me in my ugliest moments of like, you know, but like, so I can say like, thank you for reminding me why I did this, because I feel joy. Or you go, when I feel triggered, I'm like, oh, I go back to that place and I'm so mentally like mad and angry and I just want to, that's who I was. Thank you for reminding me why I went through every hardship and never looked back. It's because I have evolved and you didn't, right? And that's huge when we talk about toxic cycles or toxic relationships or things like that. And then my gratitude of my, I say tribe, of the people around me and community, and is that, you know, not only did that house just appear and I was able to move with my kids, but I had worked with Hot Tomato. It's a photography company in Marietta. Yeah. And at the time, you know, they knew I was in transition in life and stuff. And then my friend got the executive director job at the Betsy Mills. Okay. And she came to me and she's like, I have a job position for you. And I was like, and I'm working at the coffee house, right? So I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, but okay. and she's like, it's wellness director, and we're gonna get some wellness programs going, and we're gonna get this stuff going. And I talk to her on a daily basis now. I mean, how many years ago, you know, that she was no longer the executive director, but I still, every chance I get, I show her, you know, I tell her the gratitude of like, thank you for seeing something in me that I didn't even know existed, you know, and letting me be messy and letting me believe in myself, but be clunky in my transition. And so I don't know how to tell people to get to that, but except just be open when the phone rings or someone messages you and says, I have this crazy idea, that you go, let me hear it, you know? Yeah. And then to say like, this is not the path that I ever thought I would see myself on, but you know, I'm pretty darn happy, you know? And I know that like, now that half of my children are adults, you know, I always teased them. I was like, guys, go live in 5 different parts of the globe so that I can just travel and visit you. Now that 2 live in 2 different places, I'm like, oh shoot. Okay.
Now you got to do the travel.
Like, be careful what you ask for. But in a good way. Yeah. So, so, you know, I believe that if we learn these skills, it is now our responsibility to not stop talking about it, to keep sharing it, to keep shining, to keep doing, to keep posting, to keep, right? Because when we're doing it, somebody's watching that journey. So I just had a new student come into the Amputee Center as a community member, and she recently shared this story on my business page. 10 years ago, I used to do fairy tale picnics. Okay. course I did.
Seems the whole, just holds the standard. Yeah. Why not?
The park would be full, right? And I remember all the things, and these picnics were huge. I remember going down to the grass, and there's this lady by herself, really by herself, no one around, sitting there with the baby. And I was like, hey, play with the baby, whatever. And I don't know what I said. I don't know what I connected with. And she went on about an 8-year journey of a living hell after that. Custody, traveling, lots of just really awful people doing really awful things and toxic cycles for her. And she just now got custody of her son back, got herself settled in the middle of Ohio Valley, and she walks into my class.
Wow.
She says, 10 years ago, you said hi to me. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? 10 years ago. Like the power of just being like, you're seen. Like, you are here. I don't know why you're here. Because it was obviously like she was just struggling to show up there. And I was like, come anytime. 10 years later. Yeah. So I mean, that's the thing of like why we have to keep talking, why we have to keep saying, this is it. This is it. This is where I made my breakthrough. This is me being vulnerable. This is stuff I haven't told people in 8 years. The stuff people didn't know I was starving. My sisters didn't know I was starving, right? Like, I didn't tell people that stuff because I couldn't even verbalize. I was just in that fog. Now I can say, yeah, I did that. I figured it out. And there's people that walk by you every day that's living that, questioning themselves, questioning whether they're going to take their own lives, questioning if it matters if they have custody of their kid or not. And you just have to trust that every time that you speak and tell your story, that it's going to get to someone, maybe 10 years later.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's absolutely true. It never ceases to amaze me. It always happens in the moments where like it feels like we're just like grinding our wheels and going nowhere. And like, you feel like nobody's seeing your content, and you feel like your message isn't being, these moments where you're just kind of in that bottomless pit of negativity, your mind starts to go down that direction. It's in those moments that something will happen like that. You get a message from somebody, you'll have somebody tell you a story like that just like completely stops you dead in your tracks. And it's just like that moment I described with Lily, where like she knocks down the blocks and I cheer for her for the first time. And I see that look of pride in her eyes for the first time. And it just like stops you breathing almost, because you just realize this is the power and this is the responsibility I have to bring positive influence to those around me. And it is my duty to live that every single day. Now, it's not always going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to end up, you're going to end up, doing things you wish you had. All these things happen. It's part of life. It's part of being human. That's not the point. The point is that you can always work to continue growing and building yourself into the kind of person that when you walk into a room, you have a positive impact on every single person there. And I think that's kind of a perfect segue into what you're doing now, because that is what you are doing now for so many people who have had points in their lives where they may have thought their life was over. They may have thought that they would have to totally give up everything they were chasing, everything they loved. And we have the honor now of having you lead a state-of-the-art, one-of-a-kind facility that just so happens to be located in Parkersburg, West Virginia, of all places, where every day you get to affect that change in people's life.
Yeah. So I was going to say, podcast studio probably needs tissues because I cry every time.
Oh, we have a lot. We actually got some heavy duty paper towels up there extra absorbent.
And so professionally, and this is anybody who hears me talk has heard me say this. Everything, alignment, everything I have done professionally is this job. Every single thing. Public speaking, marketing, emotional support, mental health awareness, physical pain in the body, Reiki healing, energy healing, holding space for someone, teaching someone how to box. I mean, everything of who I am and all the ingredients. My mentor would kind of like hold her hands out like this, and she'd say, okay, this is your witch's brew. This is your pot. Okay. So life's coming at you and you're going to be like, that was yummy. I want more of that. Yeah. And then you just stir the pot and you're like, ooh, I didn't like that. Throw it over here. But you're just creating this sauce, right? Yeah. That's beautiful. And the stuff that worked, you're like, I want more of that. Nope. Let it pass me. And so in that, there's this, the Amputee Center, that in divine wisdom, as it was created for many years in Nancy and Mark's mind, of them wanting an inclusive space and them seeing that people, they were seeing amputees didn't interact with each other, and in and out of a doctor's office situation, you can't do much, and they're not going to strike up conversation in a waiting room. But at the same time, and this was like 2020, right? When everybody was like, whoa, what's happening to the world? They were there busy creating that. And I was busy saying, I get to create the life that I want in my home on my own. I get to set my schedule. I get to raise my 6th child the way that I want to. I got the backyard of my dreams. I've got, all this stuff so as I was setting that up, I did all that not knowing what I was going to do professionally.
But you just learned to create that like blind, what I like to call it, the unruly faith in your own potential.
I just knew. Yeah. I knew I'd be okay.
Yeah.
You know why I know I'm going to be okay? Because I always have been.
Yeah. You'd done it enough times before you'd build up the competence, so you had the confidence for it.
Yeah, like I'm gonna be okay. So what's really fun is people who meet us. Stacia Hiley is our physical therapist on staff, and so back in 2020 when actually 2021 when I was pregnant, a mutual yoga friend of ours introduced us. And so she was opening a physical therapy office and asked me to come on board. And I was like, well, about that. I'm giving myself maternity leave because I can. And but I have these skill sets, marketing and class scheduling, running the management of group classes, which I had from my previous martial art business. So I went in with her, and it was super great and supportive, in my pregnancy when I needed to sit a lot. And and she was super supportive and still is to this day of my life with Lily. And since we both have little Lilies. Yeah. And so in that class, I was teaching Tai Chi, and I had this big group of ladies that were coming. And traditional Chinese medicine and Tai Chi really is my first love. That came at the same time as my boxing career. And as I'm teaching it, these ladies are coming every single week, and they're asking me more and more questions about my life. And then they start coming to my aerial yoga class, and more people started coming to the classes that were asking me questions about my life. And I was like, what is happening here? But whatever. So these were board members of the Amputee Center. Do you know this part of the story?
I don't think I do.
Yeah.
Because when I was coming on, I think you had just recently come on as executive director. So
2 years ago,
basically,
right now.
since I've been involved, you've been there.
Okay, so this is my 2-year anniversary this week.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
As the director, I've been with them for almost 3 years. But so Nancy and Martha, September. So there were several others of their group of friends that aren't board members. I talk with my hands. I'm going to hit the mic. And so they were, first of all, they were enjoying my classes. I mean, that was not, but they were having meetings about how they could get me to teach at the Amputee Center. And I was like so oblivious to this. So, there's a couple questions that I just knew were off the wall. And I was like, what did that have to do with anything? But finally, Martha invited me to the studio, and I put on the bungee for the first time. We did some other stuff playing in the space, and I was like, cool. Didn't think anything about it. And then they asked me to come back to do a workshop. And then I started there June 1st of 2022. And I told them, I said, I want to set my own schedule. I'm still, Lily's still young. I, almost exclusively breastfeeding. Like, I didn't want to change my life. And they were like, we respect that. And then, within a couple of months, they were like, so, because actually they didn't know I had this business skill set. Mm-hmm. They just saw me as a fitness instructor. Mm-hmm. They didn't know any of this stuff about me either. And I will have to say, divine guidance, alignment, manifestations, answered prayers, whatever we want to call it. If I saw that job posted, I would have never applied for it.
Really?
No, I just wouldn't. It didn't, on paper, it didn't make sense to me. Why would I ever do this work? Right. And so I had worked in mental health for several years before that. And I was the operations director of a mental health office. But I did one-on-one and small group yoga sessions with kids, and I worked one-on-one with the child therapists. So, we got kids within 12 hours of them been taken from horrible situations, right? Yeah. And we had some cases that were super sad, and we were like, okay, well, this damage is done. We don't know that this kid will ever get out of the system. I had a lot of heartbreak there. And mental health, working in mental health was really hard on my mental health. Mm-hmm. But in 2020, I had dove into trauma-informed yoga right before we were all traumatized by COVID. And so I really got into not as much the spiritual side of yoga, but the scientific side of why, when I breathe slow, does it affect my breath? Does it then affect my nervous system? Why are all of these things lining up? And I made some great friends and colleagues and some of my clients. So I left mental health quite a while before I started at the Amputee Center. But my biggest awareness was when somebody walks at you, right, for a mental health session, whatever it is, yoga or therapy, you don't know where the amputation is. Yeah. They might be wearing clothes that I would never afford. Mm-hmm. They may have pulled up into a car that cost more than my house. And it is now my job to find the loss, to find the cut, to find the hurt. And as I fell into the Amputee Center and it's like, oh, hi, we're all friends now. Okay, I work here. I was like, wow, boom. All right, there it is. Yeah. And you go, oh, missing leg. Oh, missing arm. Oh, okay. And it took me a long time to really dive into people's leg stories, right? Like, I didn't ask that. I would just be like, I'm meeting you in this moment where you are. They might be talking about the weather or their next thing coming up or their wedding or, their latest defeat at a doctor's appointment. So being able to have that dialogue and that skill set to know how to talk to someone, I don't know this is not ego. This is me being very humble and grateful for the way things line up. I don't know anybody who thinks they're an executive director that would know what to do. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So, I immediately, because it's nothing for me to just to stop in the middle of the room and just sit down with somebody and just be like, oh gosh, and it's not about, being in the word executive, an executive role. It's about, providing that full service for whoever is there. And it may be pushing through a physical challenge releases something emotional, and we have to be prepared for that every single moment. And we have to, I think the hardest thing for me was the humor.
It throws people off so much.
That is not breaking down, crying, somebody having a bad day, needing, somebody literally falling in front of me, and we have to, figure it out. The humor is what got me, where I was like, Oh, so we're laughing about this now. Okay.
That's different.
Yeah. Okay. And then now, that I've been able to say, that I'm willing to come to a point where I can cry with you. I can say like, man, like I have compared it to, my pregnancies. So I have 5 kids, and then my 6th was an emergency C-section. Things were not done pretty. And I had a horrible recovery. And whether it was my age, whether it was, me being almost too aware of my body, because I'm like, I hurt clear out to here for weeks, and I can only say when an amputee needs my compassion, and I know that I'm crossing, not crossing a line, I'm coming up to crossing an edge of, I'm about to hold space for somebody that could somehow suddenly be irritated with me because I don't get it. I don't. So what I'll say is, I never had compassion for a C-section mom until I was one. So I can tell you the person I was before is the person I am with you right now with this amputation. But I can tell you that the C-section humbled me to a point that I now gained compassion and awareness of what it is to let your body recover, what it is to be patient with your body, what it is to get a new relationship with your body and how it moves. And even how you have to wear clothes different. I had to wear clothes different. Like sensitivity, nerve endings took years to heal, and still now there's parts when in the aerial yoga that if we roll and it pushes on your belly, I won't do it. So I can only say that that's my way of saying, I get that nerve endings feel funny. I get that it's a new way to dress. I get that it's a new relationship with your body. And beyond that, I can't, and I won't try. I won't try to relate if that's not going to help you. And I love that awareness that I got from getting to know you, because I had seen something written about, peer support for amputees, and it said, the dialogue was, we are here for you during this tragic time. And I went, but wait, there are in the 50 amputees I know, there's probably at least 5 or 6 that said it saved my life. It saved my life. And so yes, the challenges that come every single day mean I'm still here. And so gaining that perspective too, of being there with, to be able to hold space for people mentally, emotionally, and physically, and knowing like, okay, it's time to push you. Okay, no, we're not going to push you anymore. And that's just the stuff that happens, in the face-to-face, in that moment. That's not even the magic that happens with, the connections with each other, with the stories I hear them sharing with each other, with the community that's grown from it. And I mean, it's literally a legacy career, because we are we are one of a kind.
And it's like a one of a kind position too, and you're a one of a kind person who's, like you say, perfectly suited to fill this position, and it allows you to have so much positive reflection of your past, because all of these like seemingly random, crazy, wild things that you got into, like every single one of them, you can find purpose in that toward what you're doing now. And it's almost like it was just meant to happen that way. But the reason it seems that way is because you allowed yourself to be open to so many opportunities. You found opportunity in what so many would have considered to be challenge, and you allowed yourself to have that unruly faith in your own potential that allowed you to drive forward to where you developed all of these skills throughout all of these seasons of your life, to where now all of that can culminate into one incredible mission and purpose. And that's what I think is so cool about seeing how much this place has grown in the last few years, because it's really like, yeah, it's totally unique in that a space like this for amputees has never really been created before. But I would almost argue that like a space like this for anybody who faces pretty much any challenge has never been created before. A space where it's not just exclusive to just these people who are amputees. It's open to their families and to so much of the community. And what it does is it doesn't just help amputees recover from these challenges they face. It doesn't just help them gain strength and confidence going forward back out into society. It's like it actually integrates them into the surrounding community. Mm-hmm. And it integrates the surrounding community into what it can mean to be an amputee. And so in that way, it totally redefines what being an amputee is and what it can be. And it doesn't make it this thing that is tragic as this article explained. You know, there's certainly times in people's journey where it will seem like that sort of thing. But rather, this place allows everyone who enters it to rewrite that story to where whether you're an amputee or not, your eyes will be opened to what kind of potential and opportunity lies in that journey. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's what's so, I mean, when I see, I mean, there's all sorts of things that you offer there that we could talk about forever. But when I see Marley go up and do the silks, it just blows my mind. Mm-hmm. Like blows my mind. Here she is. She's what, 16?
She just turned 16. Mm-hmm.
So she's out there doing something that I could not ever fathom doing myself, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's I love seeing things like that because it's, again, it helps you just see that potential in people. Because I remember, I don't think I knew her when she first started coming around, but I remember several years ago, I don't think the person she was several years ago would have ever dreamed she'd be up performing in silks in front of the entire group at Amputee Fest.
Yeah, her grandma called me in December and
mm-hmm.
invited us to her surprise 16th birthday party. And so I said, you know, I just talked, and then she realized, she's like, oh, this is Kat, because she just called the number. And she said, you know, you guys don't know, like we were told she wouldn't leave her room at age 13. She wouldn't leave a tent in her room. Like I was in my driveway, the dogs are barking because I'm in the driveway, she's on the phone, I'm sitting there like sobbing, like as grandma's telling me this story. She's like, it was not diagnosed as, you know, clinical depression, extreme depression, whatever. She's like, but it was everything that could and would be. And we were really fearing for her life. What? And now, right? I mean, she has gone to DC. She's gone to the Capitol in West Virginia. She's taught at national or state conferences with me. We went to national conference together. And she gets up in front of people every single day, and she helps with bungee. You know, it could go on and on, but it is, yes, being younger means she's more resilient. Yes, we were able to scoop her up and give her that confidence. And honestly, like, she was hanging out in a silk, and I have kids ages 3 to 24, but she was in the silk on her phone, and I used to joke about all the selfies she'd take. And I was like, what are you doing? She's, I'm like, do something. Teenager stuff. Yeah, and I was like, you have 5 minutes. You find an aerial trick on that TikTok.
Yeah.
Show it to me and we're doing it. You know? And she was doing something, and this was one of the first times I ever interacted with her. And I was like, do you know what you don't need to do aerial silks? Legs. And seriously, it's like a movie. I walked away with my back to her, and I heard a bang, and she had thrown her leg on the floor.
That's amazing.
And I was like, game on.
There we go.
Yeah.
I can see that getting you so fired up.
I was like, okay, here we go. Yeah. And it goes back to that same parenting. Mm-hmm. I'm like, if I didn't think you could do it, I wouldn't ask you to do it. I'd leave you laying there, because if you were, the best thing for you today was to lay in that hammock, I'd leave you laying there, but that's not the best thing for you today.
Yep.
You can do this. And because you can do this, you're going to have such an amazing life and so many amazing opportunities. Your choice. Your choice. But for the next 10 minutes, we're going to do this. And then you can let me know if you want to do it or not. Yeah. And I just edged her, you know. And yeah, so now, I mean, she's definitely more comfortable assisting. She likes to hook up the silks. She likes to like get people hooked up in the bungees. She dove into a big list of our programming of like things to go do, you know, and she was like, let's go on a train ride and let's go to the theater and see a show. And so anyway, so she's just one of our success stories. But the biggest thing and the biggest segue into whatever we do, all the other stuff we do, is that she will meet you at the door, look you in the eye and be like, come on in. Yeah. We're doing a puzzle today. And it doesn't matter if you're an amputee or not, you know, and that is what the community that we're growing. And you're right. Like, no matter what it is, if it's the recovery community, if it's, there's all these stigmas to communities, that somebody might be put into a category. But I really do try, and you know, like, it's not easy. I do try to keep that energy as neutral in there as possible. And I often say, like, let's make sure that we're very open, that we don't get cliquish. Like, we're a tight group, but let's not be so tight that when people walk in, they can't. And it's important, and they get it, and we do it every single day. But you know, beyond it is not about me doing it for them. You know, because like if they have been pushed around in a wheelchair, but now they're walking up on two legs, they jump up to push the wheelchair for somebody. You know, and I say this because I go to a lot of just nonprofit events, nonprofit conferences and meetings, and we've been, you know, received grants and speak at organizations. And I'm like, you know, I think the biggest thing for grantors and for donors to understand is that a nonprofit serves a community. We get up every day, we serve a community. What is that community? What is that need? Hunger, cats and dogs, building homes, you know, Habitat for Humanity, the Humane Society, all that stuff. We have a cool thing that happens. Our greatest volunteers are our amputees. The people that we serve, the people that we serve are the ones who are creating it, and that's the future of it. So if I think about like, what would take away part of your journey is if I constantly jumped up to do stuff for you, you know? And so it's like, okay, well now how do you as amputees, you know, what do you guys want to do for an adventure? You know, who wants to put up the Christmas tree? Yeah. You know, being that to give them, you know, a passion project for themselves that they never knew that they would be able to give back to a community, and then do peer support training and be able to go to do a pre-consultation for an amputation, you know, which you had the true privilege of being able to do, you know, and I mean, it's just coming down the line, and this is what I tell people: we have the risk of amputation is so high for the epidemics that are crushing West Virginia, which is drugs and diabetes. And that's what the future is, you know? So that adds a whole nother element of prevention, education, talking about, you know, what happens if you know that you're at risk. Let's give you hope of how you can, you know, keep a limb. Like it just, there's not that we want to say, oh, well, we're a sustainable business because we're not, we're a nonprofit. We would love to not be needed. But that the work we're doing now is so important because it's setting the groundwork for what's coming at us.
Yeah, I agree 100%, because everything you highlighted there, I mean, you can look at what we talked about with Marley's story, and, you know, her in the silk not wanting to do much at first, and you pushing her to do stuff, and how that almost exactly emulates that slackline showing up at your door. You know, somebody gave that to you, and you built an entire lifetime of opportunity from it. And then you turn around and you can give that to Marley because you can remember back to when somebody gave that to you. Yeah.
It had nothing to do with the line. It had to do with the belief in me.
Absolutely.
And well, so aerial or acro yoga, you need a partner, right? Mm-hmm. So at one point I was like, I need to practice this stuff, but I don't have a partner to practice it on. So that's why I started aerial yoga.
Yeah.
And so I just happened to be, it was about this time of year, cold and snowy, and I hopped on the aerial yoga teacher training, and I said to the lady, she knew me from slacklining, it's in Northern Ohio, and I said, I see a teacher training coming up, and she goes, it's next weekend, and it's whatever amount of money, and I said, I can't afford it, and I have nowhere to stay. And she said, show up, and we got a couch for you to sleep on.
All right. That works.
And I don't even do aerials that much anymore. Mm-hmm. I'll hang upside down and stretch my back. But I mean, Khalees, my daughter, I mean, it has turned into like, she does it like she was born to do it. Mm-hmm. You know,
it's amazing watching what she can do,
and her teaching and her ability to teach, and to inspire Marley to do more things, and for her to be able to break down physically stuff that I can't do. So, you know, not only is this is not, I don't even know, it's not a job, it's a career, it's literally part of my life, because it has become a place for my kids too, that they, you know, are lining up. And then Nancy's daughter comes to aerials, and now her granddaughter has started coming to the toddler aerials. You know, so it's just turning into already this huge community impact, and the inspiration that comes from, if you can do it, I can do it. Mm-hmm. You know, because you know, in fitness, like, I'm not the ideal fitness body. People can be like, oh, well, am I skinny enough to be a yoga teacher? Am I blue? And all that stuff that goes through your head as a fitness person. But when people come into the community classes and they go, I don't know if I can do it. And I go, you walked in here with your own two legs. Mm-hmm. I've had 2 knee replacements. Yeah. But you're still basically you. Right. And so with the humor, which has taken me a while to get used to, without discounting somebody who really needs to be held with good emotion, you can take that inspiration and say, you don't have to be the vision of fitness to come in and enjoy a fitness class here. You know, we are so inclusive and so welcoming and so loving. Which is who I was 10 years ago when I ran up to that lady on her blanket. Yeah. You know, I was like, I've seen now a trend of like doormats that say, we're happy you're here. But it's like, you know, that when somebody walks in, that it's like, there is accessible fitness for anyone in this space, because we can do it with all of this equipment that we have and all of this support. I don't know. Did you see Tiffany hung upside down on the silks?
Yes. I've seen pictures.
Yes.
Of it.
Yeah. And that was completely inspired by Marley.
She's a double amputee.
Yes.
Yeah.
Double amputee above the knee. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, her fear was.
So she doesn't have a lot to work with.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. But me, because this is what I tell people when they're, you know, both legs, is that what holds you in the silk is the space around your back and then right up through your thighs. Mm-hmm. So that's all you need.
Yeah. And
she's
got that.
And she's got that, and she's so strong, and she's shown up to physical therapy twice a week, and you know, she's reaching all of those goals. And she is somebody that says, you know, she never wanted to take her own life, but there were times she didn't want to wake up. Mm-hmm. And that hits hard, because you're like, that's a sadness of, I've never followed through with it, but if it happens, it happens. Yeah. And that's not even a year ago that she came to us. Not even a year ago. And we just look at like, she is a changed woman. Just absolutely, completely, her whole soul is changed from the Amputee Center. And it's not, I mean, I won't take any, it is my job to keep all the pieces going, but it's the love of each person that, you know, when she walks in the door, that they're like, we're happy you're here.
It's a whole community of people that can make everybody else around them feel like they believe in them and they're valued. And in a way, it's this whole community building up self-value, self-worth for themselves and for others around them, and in confidence and belief. And I think that's the reason it's such a powerful place, is because it's establishing a community to everything a community aspect to everything we've talked about today, and that building self-value, building self-worth, building confidence, being open to opportunity, being, having enough belief in yourself to work through challenge, to overcome challenge, to see potential in yourself, to see potential in others. All of that exists in every aspect of everything the Amputee Center does. And the best part is that there's been community established around that. It's a community that does all of those things.
And we've all suffered loss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've all suffered loss. And we mask it. We don't have our prosthetic showing. And so if we take that, like, what I tell people, because when they can't like wrap their head around it, right? So there's actually a Portuguese word idea. It doesn't really translate to English language, but the idea is the melancholy of the women who stayed ashore when the sailors didn't come back. Yeah, like
wow.
Because they spent and it is described, the women of Portugal are described as melancholy, of this like deep sadness, because their sailors would go and they spent the whole rest of their lives watching that shoreline. And so the essence of that word is the mourning the loss of the plans we made. And so when we have a loss, and why the Amputee Center can help everybody, whether or not you have a visible loss or not, is like when we lose a limb, even I think like, women with breast cancer, that's still an amputation, right? I mean, that when we have a loss, when we have something that is a breakup, or lose a job or lose a relationship or something ends, are we sad about the actual loss? Or if we get deeper, we're actually mourning the loss of the plans we made. Mm-hmm. And if we can dig down to that and say, okay, that's it. I said that during 2020. I was like, why are we sad? Why are we really sad? Because we're mourning the loss of the plans we made, and the vision of our future that is not going to be now. And that's the stuff we hear from people like Kevin, that we heard from like John Beck, that we heard from Dory, is saying things like, I am never going to do this, and this again. And maybe some of that is true. Maybe some of it does happen. But the resilience that we get from it is then we have to switch your gears, reset the sail, and go, but I get to meet this person and this person and this person. And I've even said to that, Tiffany, tears in her eyes, sitting there, double amputee, and she's just mad at the world. And I'm like, but you would have never met me. Yeah. And then we just laugh and cry together, because that is the only way. Maybe it's delusional. Maybe it's goofy and crazy. But man, what else are you going to do to get through this stuff? Because this is some stuff. It's awful sometimes. And you go, because it's like, I cannot imagine, but I can, because I have mourned loss. And so when we say, as a nonprofit, they had talked about like, well, should we call it something else or include the community classes? Should we call it the yoga room? Or there's little talks of things. And I was like, no, Forever and a Day should be the Amputee Center. And it will always be for the purpose it was started for. To create a place for anybody dealing with limb loss and limb difference to find community and strength and support and help. But anybody with loss can find a connection there, because you're going to see hope in somebody who probably is facing loss a little bit different than you. And I'm not saying they have it worse than you or that you have to, but when you see somebody who has faced this loss and this adversity differently than how you faced it, it can at least help get you out of your own head, you know, and how you're approaching it and how you're moving forward with it. And I just get to see really great friendships blossom out of it, you know. But I think that idea that we should be allowed to grieve it, you know, not like, oh, get up on your feet and get moving again. And you know, like the quick stories on Instagram and stuff, just like, oh, that person's up and running. It's like, okay, let's talk about the
Look at
months.
the 7 years in between those frames.
Yeah, the years and the months and the challenges and the falling on my face and, you know, but I can say that too when I talk about the losses I've felt that I have, you know, like I can say that you can see me now and go, wow, cool. Yeah, well, you weren't there, you know? And I would tell people during the kind of the worst years of my journey, whatever I should call them, I'd say, I'm in a movie. And you know that
The Rocky
montage,
cutscene,
that montage when a song plays and it's like all the years and the challenges and you tough through it and then you know you're Rocky and you're up and you're like, I made it. I'm in that. I'd be like, I'm in that song right now. So like fast forward if you want to see the good part because we're not there yet.
And that's a perfect way to describe it, because what the Amputee Center can provide to anybody who walks in is you get to see firsthand all around you people who are in different parts of that movie. You know, I think about the stair steps that you guys put up to kind of line that wall when you first walk in, and it literally shows people in different parts of their journey. And no matter where you are in your journey, whether it's dealing with an amputation or any other form of loss, if you can surround yourself with a group of people where you can see different parts of that same journey, the details will be different, but the travel is the same. And if you can see those different parts and open your eyes up to the potential of what can be, and you see people who get to a point where they're so far along that journey that they look back and they're thankful for this quote unquote tragic thing that happened to them because of the unlimited world of opportunity it opened for them. You know, and I think you're absolutely right. I think when there's loss, you mourn the plans that you made. You mourn what you envisioned what could have been. And I again agree with you. You have to go through that mourning period. You have to go through that grieving period. You have to allow yourself to feel that loss and to work through that loss so that you can ultimately let go of that loss. And when you do that, that's when you can open yourself up to what, like, yes, I had this loss, but what can I build from here? Like, what potential awaits me in the future? That's what we like to say, you know, similar to the Amputee Center, we had a really hard time describing like what we do with Impossible Performance, because there's all these little things that we're involved with, but at the end of the day we realized like what we're doing is the message that we put out, and it's not something we're like selling in the traditional sense that a business operates, but it is something with immense, immeasurable value in our eyes. And so we just started saying, well, we're in the business of human potential. And that's how we like to describe it now. And I think your story throughout your life, and especially what you're doing now with the Amputee Center, you're hard pressed to find a better testament for human potential out there, because of everything you've overcome, every opportunity you've created from so much challenge, and everything you're now able to do to culminate all of that life experience into one incredible passion and purpose, where you can take all of these little pieces and apply them to the infinite combination of experiences that can walk through that door, so that you can show up and know, no matter who walks through that door, no matter what state they're in, you'll have something for them. And I think that's why the center and all of us are so lucky to have you, and we're so thankful for you being there and helping drive the growth of this place and this community. And I'm incredibly grateful for you coming on and chatting today and sharing your story with us, because I think, as is true with so many of the stories of people we have on this show, but especially in this case, we love to highlight and to be able to bring forth these messages of people who have found that impossible potential within themselves. Like, if you think back, I think back to what you talked about at the beginning, where you were that 15-year-old girl going into FFA, and you were going to go to 4-H camp and teach dancing lessons. It's like, in that time, you had this whole world of potential ahead of you. And it's like, to think back to that time period, and if that girl could have known where you would be today, she would not have believed it. If Marley could go, if the girl Marley was 4 or 5 years ago could look at who she is today, she would not have believed it. And I think when we can create transformation and positive movement in our lives to that degree, like, that's the height, that's the pinnacle, that's the greatest form we can chase. And for us, we define that as being impossible, building the person who is capable of achieving and overcoming these impossible things. I think that's exactly what you've done in your life. And I think what's greater is that's exactly what you're helping others to do in their lives today. So Thank you for everything you do, and thank you for being here. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I mean, just that, we are a nonprofit. So, the Amputee Center is a nonprofit. So anytime we do podcasts or outreach, we are a young nonprofit and we're in growth. So, anyone who finds inspiration in any of the stories, it's a passion project. And for all of us, that what else is possible for our future is only going to be defined by who shows up. Yeah. So if it's a donor, if it's somebody who has nothing to give but volunteer time, if it's just an idea, if it's, somebody saying and I've had this, my father was and passed, but I would like to help someone in the future. I mean, that's my motivation at this point of, like, why put myself out there and keep talking is because we not only want to be sitting here waiting for the next amputee to come in our door and we will be 100% ready for them. But because we're a nonprofit, we have to have all of those pieces to be ready for them. So any of these stories and anything that inspires, of anything that you put out there, because people get inspired by you every day, that we're here and we're ready to receive ideas, anything that we can do to continue to grow in our area and for anybody that is underserved at this point. Yeah,
absolutely. And for anybody because I know that there's people who are listening to this that, again, one of those moments, like people that you and I could never even imagine, are listening to this right now and feeling compelled to get involved and to become a part of this in whatever way best suits them. If somebody wants to reach out and get involved and learn more and become a part of what we do at the Amputee Center, what's the best way for them to do that?
TheAmputeeCenter.com is our website. We're very active on our Facebook page, and I'm sure somewhere on a screen you'll put the phone number. So
We'll put all of their links and everything in the show notes. So if you guys ever need to contact them or learn more, be a part of this, or get in touch with Kat and some of the amazing work she's doing and the lessons she's teaching, you'll have all those resources below. And I know you have also a whole personal side to all of your health and wellness teaching and training and education. So if people want to learn more about you or follow you on socials, where's the best place they can find you?
That is Mama Cat Wellbeing. So that's my life and well-being coaching.
Yeah. And that's on Facebook and
Yeah.
Instagram and all the social medias. We'll have all that linked below as well. So, Kat, I really appreciate you being here today. I really appreciate you adding this. There's one question that I always go back and ask everybody at the end of every episode we do, because it's one that started just kind of coming up organically, and then it's one that I always realized I got the most personal value out of it. And I know there's a lot of listeners that get a lot of personal value out of it. But I always think about going back to that moment, and the moment that pops into my mind here for this episode is the moment when you're that 15-year-old girl or whatever age, when you're at kind of the precipice of this whole life that's ahead of you, and you've grown up in, this kind of traditional farming family, and a lot of your siblings move in that direction, but you don't necessarily feel called in that same direction. You're thinking back to the kind of that pivotal moment of your life, knowing everything that you know now. What advice or what would you tell that young girl if you could go back to her?
You're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see the emotion, and I know exactly what you're feeling, because see, I get it, because every time I get under that squat bar, and there's so many people out there that do not understand why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. And I know you understand that feeling as well, because I'm sure you had people who didn't understand why you got in a boxing ring.
Oh,
you
right.
know? And I just squatted this morning, so I just went through this morning. Every single time I get under that bar, I stare at that bar, and I can see each individual piece of knurling on that bar. That's like the rough part, the grippiness, for anybody who's ever seen a barbell before. I can see each individual piece of knurling, and all I can think about is this moment when I was in a hospital bed, and I just started coming out of a coma, and I had no idea what had happened to me, no idea what was going on, no idea why there's all these pumps and these doctors and nurses and people around me, and all I want to do is I want to sit up out of this bed that I've been paralyzed in for 2 weeks. And I've got a physical therapist telling me, no, you cannot sit up, you cannot sit. And I mean, she was absolutely right. I was hooked up to way too many wires. My body had atrophied. Like, my body was not ready for that yet. But it's all I wanted in the world. And that kid could not sit up. And so all I can think about is going down, getting in that squat, and then standing up for him because he was not able to. And when you think back to those moments in life, like when you were that young woman, knowing everything that you know now, I think the greatest solace and comfort and confidence you could ever give that person is exactly what you just said, and that you're going to be okay. And I think that's what you're telling your children every day that you work with them and raise them. And I think that's what the message you're sending to all of the amputees and everybody you work with at the Amputee Center. And I think that's exactly the message that they all need to hear.
Yeah. And it's powerful.
Yeah.
It's powerful to send that message back to the younger version of yourself when you
Exactly.
don't. But that's when the people show up.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the people showed up
100%.
that were like, I go, how did that person end up in my life at the exact right time when I didn't think I was going to make it, when I didn't think I would be okay, that I thought I'd have to, change course, and then it would just be just enough and just enough and just enough to get me through the next day until I was okay.
Yeah. And you wonder, like, how it can even happen in that almost like picturesque storybook of a way. And I actually take it so far as to, and this I think to a lot of people sounds crazy, and to me it sounded crazy at first, but I take it so far as to believe that, like, the person I am today when I'm like under that squat bar or whatever I'm doing when I'm speaking or when we're doing the podcast, like, the person I am now is actually giving the strength to that young kid that he needed to make it through that thing.
Yeah.
Because I never understood where that strength came from. And so now that's the way that I explain it. And it could be crazy.
It's quantum physics.
Yeah.
Of course you sent it back to yourself.
Exactly.
Of course you did.
It could be crazy, but it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, when I approach my life and everything I do with that manner, it's again that infinite responsibility, just like I have to my daughter, just like to the people who hear our messages. It's that whole new level of responsibility that stops me in my tracks and says, this is important. This is going to change someone's life, even if it's only your own.
I think, like you said, you wouldn't change anything at this point, right?
Exactly.
But when somebody looks at you and says, I'm inspired by you, you can say, or you are this, 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 and this. And you're like, okay, I can own that. But at a point, and I see others who can't own it yet, where, you know, I didn't set out to be a strong, independent woman.
Exactly.
That was not my goal.
Yeah.
Okay. I was raised very traditionally. And so it was like, that wasn't my goal, but it was do or die, you know? And so when you say I wasn't set to lead into being, you know, amputee athlete or push for this, but for whatever support system you had, you were able to get a college education, you're in a place that you can give back. You're giving back, right? So when we get to that point of saying, I will accept the compliment that I'm an inspiration to someone, but I also will send energy back. I will say back to that person that didn't think they were going to make it, that through all these steps, keep going, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
We promise, you know? And when you see that magic happen every single day, it's like almost every month when I do a little review of the month, I mean, I'm in tears because I'm like, guys, this is what I get to see every day.
Yeah.
I'm witness to this really cool stuff every single day. Yeah. And sometimes I have a hard time deciding which to even talk about because it's like so much all the time. Many. But it's always that, like, what it does to lift me up. And then I see that it's not, I want them to take over. I don't want to have to, like, yes, you scoop each other up. Yes, you know, and then it becomes that community and that I can be inspiring as I want to be, but I didn't get here because I wanted to, but man, I'm pretty grateful I am.
Yeah. 100%. And you can take that same energy and that same message and send it back to yourself at these different points in your life. And time isn't a straight line, so maybe that's the piece that helps push that little next thing over the edge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, this has been an incredible episode. We appreciate you tagging along for this and listening in on this, because this is truly one of the most powerful episodes we've ever done. And it's an honor to have Kat in the studio with us today. And it's an honor to have each of you listening to this message today, because I know that each of you are going to take something, maybe something entirely unique or different, but you're each going to take something powerful and positively influential for your life out of Kat and her message and everything she's doing in life. And as always, we talk about being in the business of human potential, but we don't operate in any way that any traditional business does, because at the end of the day, we're not asking you to buy something. We're asking you to help us sell something. And that sale is entirely free, and it's entirely available to every single person out there. And that's, if you gained value from this message today, we just ask that you share it with someone you know, because at the end of the day, that is how we achieve our mission and our vision for everything we are doing, everything Austin and I are chasing, everything that we work endless hours to try to put out and try to achieve and try to send. You know, there's a lot of days where we may not even know why exactly we're doing what we're doing, but we can have that blind, unruly faith in our potential because we know we've been here before. We've been in moments where we had no idea what was going to happen, no idea why we were on the path we were on, but we were able to work through it, fight through it, build a version of ourselves who could overcome it. And at the end of the day, we came out okay. And that's exactly what we're doing here, and your support in listening to this, and your support in sharing this with everyone who you think it could benefit means absolutely everything to us, and it helps us achieve everything we're set out to do. Because at Impossible Performance, we are striving to build a global culture of strength, fostering a spirit of growth in constant pursuit of the impossible. Thank you for listening, and as always, be impossible.